Hey everybody, it's Christine, and today I have a new video for you showcasing the Clear Scraps new farmhouse stencils. So I'm starting things off. These stencils are longer and probably typically when you see them you're going to think home decor, but I wanted to take you out of that thought process for a few minutes and think how you could use them in other paper crafts. So I'm using this one, which is the This Is Us one, for a scrapbook layout, and what I'm doing is creating a really big title with it. So I'm going to have to line it up a little more carefully because it's way wider than a layout. So I'm going to do first the This Is, and I'm just tracing it with a pencil, and then I'm going to go ahead and trace the Us also. So you can see I shifted the stencil over and I'm lining it up underneath the Us where I want it. Now this took a little planning because I had to kind of go in knowing where I was going to put my picture and all those details. But not, nothing crazy or anything. It just, I had to think about it because I wasn't using the stencil straight on as it came. So you can see where this would be a really cool stencil though on a long piece of wood or one of our wood palette designs. You can use it for a really neat home decor piece. Now, with tracing it, I have traced it lightly in pencil, and you can see it's a really pretty brush script. And then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to just make some connections between the letters. Some of them are disconnected, and I could have left it as is, but just personal preference for what I'm going to be doing further with this, I wanted them to be connected. And what that is that I'm going to be doing some hand stitching. And so stitching just has a flow to it that I didn't want to have too many disconnects. And there wasn't really actually a ton of disconnects. Mostly I just connected the S's. But anyways, carrying on. I went ahead and punched all those holes, and then I just went through with black embroidery floss and I added hand stitching all the way around. Definitely a time commitment. Not terrible though. I just turned on Netflix and watched TV while I did it. But look at it. It looks really cool. And what a different use for the stencil. I'm not using anything traditional. No paint, no inks, but used it with pencil and just made an outline, poked the holes, and did it with stitching. So really fun. I love how that turned out. Now watch me transform this even further. Going with that farmhouse idea, I am going to create a really farmhouse theme layout. So the next thing I'm doing is I am taking some wood grain paper from Jillibean soup that actually looked like, kind of like shiplap. It came from their, a collection a couple years ago. I think it was the Farmhouse Stew collection or something like that. I'll look it up and I'll link you to it below. But I'm using that to create a mitered edge border. Now, why am I going with a mitered edge border instead of just using it, instead of just trimming down my original base? Well, I didn't have enough paper to just use it straight up. So I did have paper that was 12 inches wide, but not 12 inches tall. So I knew I could create a border just doing some mitered edges. And so that's what I went with. Now, what I'm going for is inspired by all those really pretty farmhouse signs that you see. In fact, in one of Jillibean Soup's new collections, this one that I'm working with today, in fact, has a whole sheet with a bunch of little frames with little phrases like that you would see in home decor, but little ones that you could cut out and use on your layouts. And so I wanted to mimic that look. So I've created this frame and I've got that started. Now let's go to the next step. The next step, I'm going to take my T-ruler and I am going to lightly take a brown colored pencil and draw some messy lines across there. So I'm going for that shiplap look again across it, and I'm going for the rustic look, so I'm not worrying about crisp, concise lines. I'm looking for more messy, light-handed, heavy-handed in some spots lines. And so I'm taking a real risk here because I have already put a lot of time into this layout. Obviously, the stitching, if this doesn't work, there may be tears shed. But I kind of had a feeling this was going to go down a direction that I was going to be happy with. Now, this is complicated. In some respects, there's a lot of steps to it, but at the same time, it's not that complicated. I'm not doing anything here that couldn't be done by any of you, okay? These are not super fancy techniques. Using a colored pencil to draw a line with a ruler, not real complicated. It's more complicated, just the idea of coming up with it. So feel free to steal this idea and have some fun with it. So you can see, like, I originally started making my lines wider, and then I did that because I didn't want to make too many lines and regret it. And then I decided, you know what, I do want more lines after I had put in them more spread apart. And so I went back in and added some lines. I also decided to add the line through the words to keep that look going. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take some Distress Oxide ink, and I'm going to go ahead and rub it onto my mixed media mat there so that it gets a little bit diluted. And I'm going to just take my blending pad and just rub some of that ink all over to, again, build up that farmhouse look, that distressed look. And you can see it's really starting to look like this was a whole patterned paper already. Like, I pulled it out of my stock and then added the stitches, but I didn't. And I'm so pleased with how it's coming together. We'll definitely be trying this again. I could not be happier with the result. So there you have the final result. Now it comes to actually putting the layout together, now that I've taken all this time to build my base up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add on this simple, smaller picture of me and my family. And I love this picture, and I think it goes really well with this title. We're not all looking at the camera, but we're all smiling, we're all having fun, and we're all happy. And I think it really showcases our family well. So the next thing I'm going to use is another Clear Scraps product, and these are some clear acrylic flowers. I had this whole set of them, and I knew I wanted to use them in my frame. And so what I did, because they're bigger, they're not huge by any means, but they're bigger, and I've already got a big title, so I don't have a lot of room to add more big elements on. So what I have done is cut them in half, as you can see, and then I'm tucking them underneath the frame here all the way around, because I'm going to build up this frame around the outside of my layout. And what I'm using these for is to add some kind of subtle texture to the whole thing. I'm just going to add them on with some ultra strong adhesive in my Easy Runner Grand, and I'm using that because it's pretty clear. It's not perfect with these clear items, but it's pretty darn close. And especially as I build this, you'll see why it doesn't have to be perfect. If I was putting them on there where they'd be like the focal point, I'd probably go for something different, but this works for this situation, and it's strong, so it will hold the acrylic really well. Now, if you're wondering how in the world did I cut those apart, they cut so nicely with the scissors. They are thick enough that they're definitely a strong acrylic, but they're thin enough that you can modify them as you want to. Now, you can see I've got those all the way around my layout, 2 on each side. And then what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take a whole bunch of the flowers from this Garden Harvest collection from Jillibean Soup, and I am going to fill up my frame and just create a garden all the way around my frame. The reason I went specifically for this collection was the colors. They have yellows, they have navy blue, they have a turquoise color, and I knew it was going to coordinate really nicely with my picture, so I wouldn't have to turn my picture into black and white. And it just has some extra colors in there that are pretty unique. It's got a really one-of-a-kind color scheme that I really like. The pinks and the corals and purples. There's just a lot of really pretty rich colors in there that were jumping out at me. And it's actually the first time I've used this collection, so I was excited to play with it a little bit. So what you can see I'm doing is adding those flowers, and I'm going very methodically about this because I don't want to overwhelm the whole thing. and I want to have a good balance of color. So you could see I added one yellow to each side, and then I'm going in and I'm adding in this pinkish coral, one to each side. And then now you can see I've really built it up. I've used some of the ephemera, I've used some of the papers and done some fussy cutting, and I have gone through the exact same method that I did as I started. I add a little bit of each color to each side, and then I start to the next one. Now, you can see right now where the acrylic flowers are, there's a little bit of color lacking. They bring definitely a nice shape, and they're bringing something unique to this layout that helps to make everything pop a little more. But I can't have that complete color gap. So what I'm going to do is I am going to add some greenery just to the edges of it, so I don't lose the flower petals on those acrylic shapes at all. But I'm going to go along the edge there with the frame and tuck some greenery in, just so that I don't have those shapes. Otherwise, I feel like it's a little bit awkward. And so I want those to add to the layout. And so this is how I'm going to do it. And I'm really happy with how it ends up looking. This layout was so fun, so much fun. The stitching, creating the background, adding in those beautiful acrylic shapes, cutting all those flowers, just so much fun. I definitely encourage you to get some of these new farmhouse stencils and give them a whirl on your layouts. And check out some of our other new products over at Clear Scraps. We've got a lot of really neat stuff to play with. And of course, check out Garden Harvest too from Jillibean Soup. Thanks for joining me today. We'll see you again next time.